The first 3 legs of the Macabre Marathon are behind us. We've survived the slashers, outrun the ghosts, and faced the found horrors. But you're about to find out that the most dangerous place on Earth isn't a haunted house or a dark forest. It's the 6 inches between your ears. Welcome to Episode 4, Psychological Horror. We call this one the slow poison. These aren't movies you watch. They're movies you contract. They don't use jump scares to make you scream. They use reality to make you doubt your own sanity. We're ranking these by 3 lethal metrics. Dread, the crushing weight in your chest that tells you the trap has already snapped shut. Complexity, the mind game factor. How hard is the movie working to break your brain? Atmosphere, the visual rot. That grimy, flickering feeling that something is deeply wrong. If you're looking for a happy ending, you're in the wrong place. We're descending into the basement of the human psyche, and we're locking the door behind us. Starting our countdown at number 10 is the film that turned a simple phrase into a death sentence.
I'm your #1 fan.
Rob Reiner's Misery. While most of Stephen King's adaptations rely on the supernatural, Misery is a grounded, clinical look at obsession and the terrifying reality of being trapped with your #1 fan. Kathy Bates's performance as Annie Wilkes remains the gold standard for the psychological antagonist. A woman who flips from maternal sweetness to bone-shattering rage in a single heartbeat. It's a claustrophobic masterclass that proves the most dangerous place on Earth is a guest bedroom in a house in the middle of nowhere. The breakdown. Dread. This earns an 8. The horror here is physical. It's the sound of a key turning in a lock from the outside and the realization that you are completely helpless. Every time Annie walks into the room, the audience holds their breath, waiting for the storm to break. Psychological complexity. Annie Wilkes earns an 8.5. She isn't a cackling villain, she's a tragedy. Her erratic personality and the way she methodically gaslights her victim makes this a high-stakes chess match of the mind. It's a deep dive into the dark side of devotion and the fragility of a mind that has lost touch with reality. Atmosphere. The setting earns a 7.5. The isolated, snow-covered farmhouse serves as a perfect pressure cooker. It feels warm and cozy until you realize it's a cage that smells like old books and medicine. It's a setting that feels like it's shrinking as the movie progresses. It's a brutal, grounded reminder that the scariest monsters don't need masks. They just need a sledgehammer and a smile. But while Annie Wilkes was holding a writer captive in the mountains, our next entry takes us into a clinical, high-end facility where care is just a mask for a much larger, sterile conspiracy. At number 9, we have the most recent addition to our list, a film that proves the slow poison is still very much alive in modern cinema, James DeMonaco's The Home. Starring Pete Davidson in a career-defining turn, The Home strips away the humor and replaces it with a clinical, high-stakes paranoia. By setting the horror in a luxury retirement community, DeMonaco taps into a universal fear. The loss of autonomy within a system designed to care for you. It's a sterile, gaslighting nightmare that starts with a whisper and ends with a scream, reminding us that sometimes the institutions we trust the most are the ones hiding the darkest secrets. The breakdown. Dread. This earns an 8.5. The dread here is administrative. It's the feeling of being a single cog in a massive, uncaring machine. As the protagonist, Max, uncovers more about the facility, the sense of an inescapable net tightening around him becomes suffocating. Psychological complexity. The facility staff earns a 7.5. The horror stems from the institutional gaslight. Every time Max sees something he shouldn't, the staff responds with a calm, logical explanation that makes him and the audience question his own sanity. It's a fascinating look at how easily the truth can be overwritten by those in power. Atmosphere. This earns a massive 9. The visual style is purely Kubrickian. The film uses oppressive symmetry, blinding whites, and sharp pops of cherry red to create a world that feels too clean to be safe. It's an atmosphere that feels less like a home and more like a laboratory where the residents are the specimens. It's a sleek, modern descent into institutional madness that proves the scariest conspiracies are the ones that happen in plain, clinical sight. But while the conspiracy in the home is hidden behind a corporate smile, our next entry takes us into a housewarming party where the mind games aren't just personal, they're social. At number 8, we're dissecting a film that proved the most dangerous place to be is an invited guest, Jordan Peele's Get Out. While it's often discussed for its brilliant social commentary, at its core, Get Out is a masterclass in psychological tension. It starts with the microaggression, the tiny, unsettling moments that tell you something is wrong, and slowly builds into a full-scale psychological harvest. Jordan Peele redefined the genre by weaponizing the polite society, showing us that a smile can be just as terrifying as a mask when it's hiding a hollowed-out soul. The breakdown. Dread. This earns an 8. The dread in Get Out is a slow crawl. It's the creeping realization that Chris is being methodically isolated from the outside world. From the moment the keys go missing to the eerie stillness of the grounds at night, the film excels at making the audience feel the walls closing in before a single drop of blood is even spilled. Psychological complexity. This earns a 9. This is where the film truly shines. Between the trauma of Chris's past and the chilling concept of the sunken place, the movie explores the horror of losing total agency over your own body. It's a literal representation of being a passenger in your own mind, screaming from the darkness while someone else pulls the strings. Atmosphere. The Armitage estate earns an 8.5. The setting is deceptively beautiful, a sprawling, sun-drenched manor that feels prestigious and welcoming. But the slow poison is in the details, the vacant stares of the groundskeepers and the rhythmic clinking of a silver spoon against a teacup. It's an atmosphere of predatory hospitality. It's a visceral, socially charged nightmare that proves the most effective mind games are played by those who claim to admire you the most. But while the horror of Get Out is about being trapped in someone else's reality, our next entry takes us into a home invasion where the killers aren't looking for money. They're looking to break the fourth wall. At number 7, we're looking at a film that doesn't just want to scare you, it wants to make you complicit. Michael Haneke's 2007 shot-for-shot remake of his own masterpiece, Funny Games. This isn't your typical home invasion thriller. There are no masked slashers and no clear motives. Instead, we're given 2 polite, well-dressed young men in white gloves who dismantle a family's life through pure psychological attrition. Haneke weaponizes the slow poison by removing the safety net of cinematic tropes, forcing the audience to sit in the discomfort of a nightmare that refuses to follow the rules. The breakdown. Dread. This earns an 8. The dread here isn't about what might happen. It's the realization that there is no escape. Once the golf club is swung and the games begin, the film settles into a cold, clinical pace that makes the inevitable conclusion feel like an oncoming train you're tied to the tracks of. Psychological complexity. The villains earn an 8.5. Paul and Peter aren't characters. They are personifications of nihilism. They break the fourth wall, wink at the camera, and even rewind the film itself when things don't go their way. It's a psychological assault on the viewer, questioning why we enjoy watching violence and stripping away the hope of a final girl savior. Atmosphere. The Lakeside Vacation Home earns a 9. Hanukkah uses long static takes and a complete lack of a musical score to create a suffocating silence. The bright, airy holiday home is transformed into a sterile execution chamber where the only sounds are the polite requests of the killers and the desperate pleas of the victims. It's a cold, metafictional punch to the gut that proves the most terrifying thing a killer can do is remind you that they know you're watching. But while Funny Games plays with the reality of the audience, our next entry takes us deep into the fractured mind of a man who can no longer tell the difference between his military past and a literal hell on earth. At number 6, we are descending into a waking nightmare that defined the unreliable reality subgenre, Adrian Lyne's Jacob's Ladder. Long before it inspired the Silent Hill franchise, this film was traumatizing audiences with its visceral depiction of a mind coming apart at the seams. Tim Robbins delivers a haunting performance as Jacob Singer, a Vietnam vet who finds himself caught between a crumbling New York City and a literal hellscape. It's a film that refuses to let you get your bearings, blending grief, government conspiracy, and theological terror into a cocktail of pure psychological distress. The breakdown. Dread. This earns a 9.5. Jacob's Ladder features some of the most oppressive dread ever captured on film. It's not just about the monsters in the periphery, it's the constant, vibrating fear that the floor is about to drop out of reality. The hospital gurney sequence alone is a masterclass in making the viewer feel physically trapped in a descending nightmare. Psychological complexity. Jacob's Journey earns an 8. The film operates on multiple layers. Is it a drug-induced flashback, a dying man's final moments, or a genuine descent into the inferno? It forces the audience to navigate Jacob's trauma alongside him, making every revelation feel as fragile as his sanity. Atmosphere. The 1970s New York setting earns an 8.5. The film turns the city into a purgatory of steam, flickering subway lights, and faceless entities. It's a grimy, shivering atmosphere where the line between a crowded street and a lonely void is paper-thin. The twitching head shakes and blurred entities create a visual rot that feels truly otherworldly. It's a harrowing, deeply emotional journey through the bardo that proves the most terrifying demons are the ones we carry home from the war within ourselves. We've just crossed the halfway point of the Macabre Marathon, and the air is getting thinner. Up until now, we've seen the slow poison at work in snowy cabins, sterile institutions, and the grimy streets of New York. We've seen characters fight to keep their grip on reality. But as we move into the top 5, that grip is about to fail completely. The films left on the board aren't just psychological thrillers. They are cultural tremors. They are the movies that didn't just scare an audience, they changed the way we look at the world. If you're enjoying this descent into the human psyche, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. We're building the ultimate horror archive here, and you don't want to be left behind when we reveal our number 1 pick. We are moving from the middle tier into the territory of the heavy hitters, where the scores are nearly perfect and the trauma is permanent. Starting our top 5 is a film that proves you don't need shadows to hide a monster. Sometimes the most terrifying things happen. In total, Blinding Daylight. Opening our top 5 is a film that redefined the visual language of the slow poison, Ari Aster's Midsommar. While most horror movies hide their monsters in the shadows, Aster does the unthinkable. He bathes the entire nightmare in perpetual, blinding Swedish sunlight. What starts as a journey for a group of grad students to witness a rare midsummer festival slowly warps into a visceral study of grief, codependency, and cult indoctrination. It's a floral-drenched panic attack that proves you don't need darkness to be completely and utterly lost. The breakdown. Dread. This earns an 8.5. The dread in Midsommar isn't a spike, it's a plateau. Because the sun never sets, there is no natural reprieve, no safe time to sleep. From the moment the group arrives at the Horga commune, the audience is trapped in a wide-eyed state of anxiety, watching the hospitality slowly turn into a predatory harvest. Psychological complexity. Danny's Journey earns an 8.5. At its heart, this isn't a movie about a cult. It's a movie about a breakup. The film brilliantly explores how extreme trauma and a lack of emotional support can make even the most horrific environment feel like a sanctuary. It's a complex look at how belonging can be the most dangerous drug of all. Atmosphere. This earns a perfect 10. This is the gold standard for daylight horror. The saturated colors, the breathing tapestries, and the dissonant screeching strings create a sensory overload that feels like a drug-induced hallucination. Aster creates an atmosphere that is simultaneously beautiful and revolting, making the Horga commune feel like a living, breathing organism that is slowly digesting its guests. It's a gorgeous, harrowing masterpiece of folk horror that proves the most terrifying smile is the one that never reaches the eyes. But while the horror of Midsommar is found in the bright fields of Sweden, our next entry takes us back into the rain-soaked, neon-lit grime of a city where a different kind of slow poison is being delivered, one sin at a time. At number 4, we enter the rain-soaked, neon-lit gutters of a city without a name. David Fincher's Seven. This isn't just a crime thriller. It is a descent into a specific kind of urban hell. While the world focused on the "what's in the box" finale, the true slow poison of Seven is the atmospheric nihilism that drips from every frame. We follow Detective Somerset and Mills as they track a killer who doesn't just want to murder his victims. He wants to use their own sins to dismantle the very idea of hope. It's a film that leaves a layer of grime on your soul, proving that the mind can be broken long before the heart stops beating. The breakdown. Dread. This earns a perfect 10. The dread in Seven is absolute. It's the feeling that the killer has already won before the movie even starts. From the constant oppressive rain to the ticking clock of the 7 sins, Fincher creates a sense of inescapable fate. By the time we reach the desert for the final reveal, the dread has become so heavy it's almost physical. Psychological complexity. John Doe's philosophy earns an 8. The complexity here lies in the killer's conviction. He isn't a chaotic slasher. He is a meticulous, disciplined moralist who views his atrocities as sermons. The film forces us to confront the terrifying logic of a man who has completely surrendered his humanity to a twisted sense of justice. Atmosphere. The nameless city earns a 9. Fincher's use of high contrast shadows and a desaturated palette makes the city feel like a rotting carcass. It's a place where it's always raining, the lights are always flickering, and the air feels thick with decay. The atmosphere is so thick, you can almost smell the copper and the rain-slicked pavement. It's a brutal, rain-drenched masterpiece of abnegation that reminds us the most dangerous weapon in the world isn't a gun, it's a plan. But while Seven explores the rot of a city, our next entry takes us into the fractured mind of an artist, where the slow poison of perfectionism turns a dream of the stage into a waking nightmare of feathers and blood. Taking the bronze medal in our marathon is a film that captures the literal slow poison of perfectionism, Darren Aronofsky's Black Swan. This is psychological horror at its most visceral and intimate. We follow Nina Sayers, a ballerina whose drive to be perfect for the lead in Swan Lake causes her reality to fracture in real time. Aronofsky doesn't just show us a mental breakdown, he makes us feel the skin-crawling physical cost of obsession. It's a dizzying, hallucinatory journey where the boundary between the dancer and the role dissolves, proving that the most ruthless predator is often the one staring back at you from the mirror. The breakdown. Dread. This earns a 9. The dread in Black Swan is internal and intrusive. It's found in the sound of a cracking joint, the sight of a hangnail being pulled too far, and the creeping suspicion that Nina's rival is always one step behind her. It's a relentless, escalating panic that mirrors the frantic tempo of the stage. Psychological complexity. Nina's transformation earns a 9.5. The film is a masterclass in depicting the split self. It explores the war between the repressed, virginal white swan and the dark, liberated black swan emerging from within. The complexity lies in the ambiguity. Is she being sabotaged by her mother and rivals, or is she the architect of her own destruction? Atmosphere. The world of the New York City Ballet earns a 9. The atmosphere is a blend of high art elegance and body horror grime. The flickering lights of the rehearsal halls, the heavy breathing, and the dissonant reworkings of Tchaikovsky's score create a sensory cage. It feels claustrophobic, cold, and dangerously sharp. It's a breathtaking, tragic descent into artistic madness that reminds us that sometimes achieving perfection requires you to destroy everything you are. But while Nina was losing herself in the shadows of the stage, our next entry takes us back to 1960, to a lonely motel and a shower curtain, to meet the man who defined the slow poison for an entire generation. Taking the Silver Medal is the film that didn't just move the needle, it broke the machine. Alfred Hitchcock's 1960 masterpiece, Psycho. This is the architectural blueprint for every film on this list. Before Hitchcock, horror was about monsters and ghouls. After Psycho, horror was about the person sitting next to you on the bus. By killing off his leading lady in the first act, Hitchcock pulled the rug out from under global cinema, forcing us into a lonely motel with Norman Bates, a man whose slow poison was brewed in the basement of a house on a hill long before we ever checked in. The breakdown. Dread. This earns an 8.5. The dread here is legendary. It's the visual of that Victorian house looming over the modern motel, the past literally looking down on the present. Even 60 years later, the tension of Norman's awkward, stuttering politeness creates a skin-crawling sensation that something is fundamentally wrong with the reality he's presenting. Psychological complexity. Norman Bates earns a 9.5. This was cinema's first real look at a fractured identity. The complexity isn't just in the twist, but in the tragic codependent relationship between Norman and the ghost of his mother. It's a deep, Freudian dive into trauma, repression, and the terrifying idea that a mind can be a house with too many occupants. Atmosphere. The Bates Motel earns a perfect 10. The high-contrast black and white cinematography creates a world of sharp angles and deep shadows. From the taxidermy birds watching from the walls to the screeching violins of Bernard Herrmann's score, Hitchcock crafts an atmosphere of clinical, isolated madness that has never been duplicated. It is the foundational text of psychological horror, a film that taught us that the most terrifying thing in the world isn't a monster. It's a son's devotion. But while Norman Bates was hiding in the shadows of the past, our number one pick takes the slow poison into the modern age, introducing us to a killer who doesn't just want to break your mind, he wants to have it for dinner. Standing Alone at the Top of the Mountain is the only horror film in history to sweep the Big Five at the Oscars, Jonathan Demme's The Silence of the Lambs. This is the ultimate evolution of the slow poison. It's a film that functions like a surgical strike on the human psyche. We follow FBI trainee Clarice Starling as she enters a literal dungeon to interview the most sophisticated monster in cinema history, Dr. Hannibal Lecter. It's a film that doesn't just present a mystery, it invites you into a high-stakes psychological autopsy where the line between the hunter and the hunted is blurred by a glass partition and a bottle of Chianti. The breakdown. Dread. This earns a 9. The dread in silence is clinical and unrelenting. It isn't just about the ticking clock to save Catherine Martin, it's the intellectual dread of being seen by Hannibal Lecter. Every time Clarice enters that asylum, the air leaves the room. You aren't just watching a conversation, you're watching a brilliant mind be picked apart by a predator who can smell your deepest traumas. Psychological complexity. This earns a perfect 10. This is the gold standard. The relationship between Clarice and Lecter is the most complex dynamic in the genre. It's a transaction of quid pro quo, the exchange of state secrets for the deepest, darkest memories of childhood. Beyond that, the film explores the psychology of identity through Buffalo Bill, creating a multi-layered study of what it means to want to become something other than what you are. Atmosphere. The production design earns a 9.5. From the damp subterranean cages of the Baltimore State Hospital to the claustrophobic, cluttered basement of Buffalo Bill, the atmosphere is heavy with the scent of old paper and copper. The film uses extreme close-ups to force the audience into an intimate, uncomfortable proximity with its monsters, making you feel the heat of their breath on the back of your neck. It is a flawless masterpiece that proves psychological horror can be as sophisticated as it is terrifying, reminding us that the mind is a labyrinth, and some people are born to get lost in it. And there it is, the definitive top 10 psychological rankings for the Macabre Marathon. We've traveled from the fractured reality of Jacob's Ladder to the predatory brilliance of Hannibal Lecter. We've seen that the slow poison doesn't kill you with a blade. It kills you by making you doubt the very ground you stand on. If you survive this countdown, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. Tell us in the comments which movie managed to get under your skin the most. But prepare yourself, for our next leg, we're moving away from the mind and deep into the marrow. In episode 5, we're exploring body horror. We're talking about the terror of the flesh, where the monster isn't outside and it isn't in your head. It's your own anatomy betraying you. We're going to find out exactly how much the human body can endure before it breaks. Stay safe, stay sane, and remember, it's all in your head. For now. But next time, it's going to be in your blood.